Jeskai Charm is a card that we haven't really seen for about a year. You know, sometimes Kevin Jones would run that kind of card in his Jeskai aggro decks, but we never see that sort of card show up, say, anywhere near a Todd Anderson list.
I've heard these players talking about using the Submerge ability on Jeskai Charm, the ability to put a creature on top of the opponent's deck, which you can do in response to a fetch land. You know, that way that they're not going to draw it next turn. I think that the best Jeskai Charms in that situation are actually the ones where they have a bad creature and you force them to redraw it. But either way, it's a mode to consider. More than not, though, they're just trying to go forward to the dome. It's a one-mode charm.
Yeah, well, that's the upside on the card, is that you can make them redraw a curve creature. You know, there's sometimes there are creatures that are like a Warden of the First Tree, right? Say you play it, you pump it on turn 2, and then I Jeskai Charm it. You having to redraw that Warden is quite bad. It's actually worse than a random card in your deck.
Or if your opponent's playing Sylvan Advocate, they have 4 lands and they miss a land drop, make them redraw their 2/3. That can be a quite powerful tempo swing.
It's like, have you ever had someone oust your Birds of Paradise? It's just, it's worse than them killing it.
I'm not one to cast a Birds of Paradise, but I have ousted a few myself.
It's horrible. You get to turn 3 and then you draw Birds of Paradise and it's bad. Andrew Tenjum's going to have Seeker of the Way here on turn 2, starting off on just basic lands.
Graves leading on Eiley.
Yeah, Eiley with the 2/3, and thanks to Death Touch, she should be able to block Seeker of the Way, even if Andrew prowesses him.
And considering just the burn angle of Andrew's deck, actually being able to trade in combat here is really great. The Death Touch ability on Eiley will allow him to do that no matter what happens in terms of prowess.
I like this. Both players, 4-color decks, both of them starting off on basics. Thanks to these Battle for Zendikar Karmana bases, they should be working just fine.
But if you look at the specific lands they are playing, Andrew does have original Onslaught fetches. He has Unhinged basics, whereas Robert Graves has the Khans of Tarkir fetches. And
I don't know if they're both Khans. I think they're just out of the draft box fetches.
Is that a lands. Champions of Kamigawa Plains? I like that one.
No. I actually, so the way I do it is I use regular ones, but I have a specific art I've picked out. Like one time I went through Gather and I picked out my favorite art of each one. So I actually play Champions of Kamigawa Plains. And that's not a Champions of Kamigawa Plains.
Tenjum has a Crackling Doom, so the Ailey will not get to trade.
So with that, Graves takes 2 off the Crackling Doom, 3 more off the Seeker. Big turn for Tenjum. But Graves has an answer here. It's going to be Reflector Mage reflecting the Seeker of the Way back into Andrew's hand.
This is something to like about this Jeskai Black burn deck, though, is Graves is already down to 14.
And you're already worried, right? You're already counting.
Right. Sure, your creature got returned to your hand, but now you can just start pointing burn spells
right?
at their dome.
Right, we see, okay, you start looking at this, you say, okay, Mantis. What if Andrew's hand was Mantis Rider, Jeskai Charm, Goblin Dark Dweller? So it's like, okay, well that's 11. And
and the Mantis Rider is sticking around.
Oh, the Mantis, that is 14.
Could be exactly
that's
lethal.
14.
Yep.
That's 3 cards.
And I believe that Tenjum has more than 3 cards in his hand.
So it could be more than 14.
He's got that plus.
So Reflector Mage swung in. No player played anything on their turn 4. Tenjum played a tap land. It was a Wandering Fumarole.
There's like a 0% chance that Graves does not have a Collected Company. Passing on that Flooded Strand for a Canopy Vista.
Yeah, that's... no, maybe the 4-color Rally deck just has no creatures at 2 or 3 this turn. You know?
Yeah.
What about that?
The play could be to rally for Eiley to block.
Yeah, maybe that could be it. So it's either he has a Collected Company here or he has all lands.
He either has a Collected Company or he has forgotten to cast a main phase spell.
All right, well, we'll see which one it is. Oh, he's fetching for green. I have a hunch as to... I think you're going for the Collected Company.
Smart play.
Tenjum played Seeker of the Way on this turn, though. We're on Tenjum's end step. We'll see whether or not... In the main deck, Tenjum has 2 copies of Dispel. Those are the only counter spells he has. But here is one of them, and Collected Company will be dispelled.
That's perfect. Robert is so far off from killing with Rally, having that dispel here.
Yeah, the graveyard is just Eiley.
Ooh, we're seeing the face down fetch. I can't imagine that Tenjum's deck is too prone to going to time, but these time-saving techniques are good to practice one way or the other. He is a very deliberate player.
I like how Tenjum's plays out. It's deliberate, yet still with good pace.
You want to make the easy turns as fast as possible so that you have a little bit more breathing space for the hard ones.
Exactly. Elvish Visionary drawing Reflector Mage. Graves, now Zulaport Cutthroat, and an Evolving Wilds. Okay, so now the Rally deck is starting to set up its shop.
Yep.
We're seeing, copies of each of these cogs. The graveyard has an Eiley in it. Elvish Visionary, Reflector Mage, Zulaport Cutthroat. We're still missing, maybe a Sifter, a Nantuko Husk.
Need a little more value. Robert seems to have 2 copies of Rally in his hand. They're not set up to do much of anything just yet. And seeing as those are the cards in his hand, they're not getting better without the help from the top of the deck.
Well, here's a swing off Seeker of the Way. Robert's just going to go ahead and chump block it with the Elvish Visionary.
It is worth noting, though, with 2 copies and an Eiley in the graveyard, there is the ability to value Rally at basically no cost. You'll be able to sacrifice the creatures with Eiley. The Eiley will end up getting exiled.
She can't sacrifice herself. She's not an Nantuko Husk.
Right.
Zombies might eat themselves. A core wouldn't do that.
No.
They're too civilized.
A core would not even eat another core. They would sooner starve. They are an honorable race.
Is that true? She can't eat another core?
I don't know. I was just, work with me here.
I don't. Okay. I don't think that's how the card works. Another Seeker of the Way joins the board for Andrew.
And another land that I'm pretty sure is a Kamigawa basic joins the field for Robert.
Yeah, I believe that one is.
Those floating masses of land located near the School of Manamo.
The school at Water's Edge.
And its majestic waterfalls.
It could be by the Palace in the Clouds as well. Oboro, have you heard of it?
I have. Have you been?
I haven't.
I hear it's lovely this time of year.
You try to go there, but then it just disappears. Another Reflector Mage for Robert Graves. That'll bounce Seeker of the Way.
And Graves still at 14.
So how interesting. Somehow, in the course of all of this, Graves got pulled ahead on life points.
Yeah, this burn deck is not executing on the level that you might hope that it would. Tenjum does only have white mana, so by casting that Seeker of the Way, he lost access to cast anything like a Jeskai Charm on that turn.
And maybe Graves isn't going to need to rally here. He could just play value Magic with Reflector Mage aggro, and that could do it.
Yeah, these 2/3s are attacking for a real number against an opponent on 12, and the Cutthroat only amplifies that pressure.
So a Seeker still in Tenjum's hand. Now he can't cast that because it was reflected last turn. See, Tenjum checks the graveyard. He's already used one of his 2 main deck spells on a Collected Company. Rally the Ancestors has got to be on his radar.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a big one. Chandra Flamecaller for Andrew Tenjum.
Thinking about what to do with it.
Seeker's up to a 3/3. That's not going to be big enough to survive.
The attack first here clearly suggests that the plan is to sweep the board. Maybe he's going to discard his hand and draw that many cards +1, but I'd be rather amazed if that is the line.
Yeah, probably not +1ing anymore. So here's a swing. It's a Prowess Seeker of the Way. If Robert takes 3, Andrew's almost certain to sweep the board. And that's what happened. I wonder if Robert had double blocked the Seeker with the Reflector Mages, if Andrew still would have -3.
Yeah, that's an interesting spot.
Because I think Robert takes that block if he's sure that it would still happen.
Right. Looking at the game now with Robert with access to just an extra rally to value and the Eiley being his sacrifice outlet, his life total is going to be very safe for a while. The Chandra does apply significant pressure, though the rally can generate blockers on this turn. And you can just, with the 2 Reflector Mages, you just bounce the 2 tokens and take no damage off the ability.
That seems pretty excellent. And Mantis Rider going to be the play for Tenjum.
Presumably, one of the mages will now be bouncing Mantis Rider instead of a 3/1.
I would think that would have to happen here. So it'll be 2 3/1s, a Mantis Rider. Andrew Tenjum's last cards, he has a Jeskai Charm in hand as well. This is a lot of surprise damage.
Yep, untap on a board with no creatures, deal 9. We knew what the Chandra was going to do, but still a lot of damage.
So Robert's going to rally the creatures back from his graveyard. 2 Reflector Mages, an Elvish Visionary, an Eiley, and a Zulaport Cutthroat. Good value, but not great value just yet.
No, I imagine we're going to see a bounce on the Mantis Rider, a bounce on a token, and a block with the Elvish Visionary because it gains us the least life with Eiley.
Reflector Mages will bounce the Elemental and the Mantis Rider. Now, I'm a little surprised here. I actually expected Robert to bounce Elvish Visionary with one of the Reflector Mages or try to make a play like that.
I believe you can only bounce opponent's creatures.
Oh, okay. It's only, oh, right.
Sidisi's Faithful
Sidisi's Faithful
would enable
can do
that
that,
line.
okay.
Right.
Yeah, confirmed. That actually, you're absolutely right. That one is not a symmetric effect.
Gotta power down the card somehow.
You gotta save me from myself on the cards, you know.
Thinking about blocking with Eiley, not in love with that line. You want to be able to.
Without that sacrifice outlet, then the creatures get exiled.
You want to be able to put all of these creatures in your graveyard, and also gain the most life possible. Unclear if he has any idea that Tenjum is a Jeskai Charm deck at this point in time, but you have seen Mantis Rider and there's Chandra in play, so you know that your life total is under duress.
Now you talk about that life gain. Eiley, one of the great new additions to the 4-color Rally deck.
I might have figured out what's happening here. So Chandra's tokens are 3/1s, which strongly resemble Spark Elementals. They don't have Trample. We saw Robert shove a 3 toughness creature in front. He might think that they do. It is a new card.
Yeah, that would make more sense.
He gains more life by sacrificing the Reflector Mage.
By putting... If he didn't think that... Right, it would make sense for him to block with the Elvish Visionary there and not with the Reflector Mage.
Right.
And you know, early on in a format, that's a pretty understandable mistake to make.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no real issue with using mana on your turn here. He has plenty of mana to go around.
Yeah, so Robert gaining lots of mana off all those sacrifices. Tenjum now down to 9.
Peeled the third rally off the top. That is not what he was looking for here.
Well, he needs another sacrifice outlet if he wants to do anything productive with this rally.
Right, the Eiley is gone now.
And he's going to need it quickly. Chandra's still on the table. He has Tenjum down to 8.
Yeah, and he does have the 2 Reflector Mages in the graveyard, and you can use that to gain some life and block a turn of damage from Tenjum, but at that point, you have to set up entirely all over again.
Yeah, I mean, if you rally and get your whole graveyard exiled, there's no way Robert can win anymore, I wouldn't think.
And for a combo deck, the rally deck doesn't just set up. There's no gather the packs or anything like that to just dump cards in your graveyard.
Swing of 2 elementals. Robert will take. He'll go to 11. And Tenjum with a pretty stocked hand here.
So Robert is looking for a Collected Company off the top, and he's looking for a good one. Sidisi's Faithful is neither of those things. Blocks 3/1s, I suppose.
So he'll cast it just as the 0/4.
On Tenjum's next turn, he'll have access to Mantis Rider again.
And it's just looking like he's fallen one combo piece short of being able to put this one together.
And there's the, yeah, if that draw was bad that turn, yeah.
That's why we like Jeskai Charm, is that should seal it up. I mean, next turn there's an attack from Chandra, then another attack from Chandra.
Graves at least has a Polluted Delta in play, so he can fetch it away, but even still.
Mantis Rider plus 2 elementals. Will Robert go to 2, or does he have to rally? If he rallies, he's going to lose so much of his board here.
Oh, yeah. And all of his graveyard.
Well, he could rally for 2 and just get back Zulaport, Cutthroat, and Elvish Visionary and block the 2 elementals.
That's fair. At that point, without the Cutthroat, he loses a lot of what matters in his graveyard, though.
And he's going to rally. Draws Collected Company off Elvish Visionary.
Yeah, he's just in a bad spot one way or the other, and at least if you go for the rally here, you're building towards something. You don't want to bounce these tokens with a Reflector Mage. You really just want to block them so you can keep that Visionary and that Cutthroat in your graveyard.
Yeah, you actually want you guys to be locked. So what he can do is he can have both Reflector Mages target the same Mantis Rider.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe
That's what he's done.
It's a May trigger as well.
Oh, okay. So he can't just decline to bounce.
Yeah, you can just play it on an empty board and it doesn't do anything.
These newfangled cards.
Yeah.
Can't bounce my own guys. I can just decline to bounce. What is it? They're just
They take the pressure off, you know? Give you a little less to think about, a little ease of mind.
No. Reflector Mage is not a May, so he's going to have to double target the Mantis Rider. Yeah,
okay.
we're going to have to do some of those high tech
opponent's
plays.
creatures must. Okay, so double target the Mantis Rider is the line.
I like it back when your cards had huge mechanical downsides to them, so you have to learn these intricate tricks inside the rules to make them work.
We were actually discussing Flame Tongue Kavu earlier this weekend. With no creatures in play, he's forced to self-implode his own head.
That's how. Yeah, it's just how this biology works. You know, their fire builds up in their mouth, and if they can't shoot it out at something, their head explodes. It is the tragic tale of Flame Tongue Kavu.
That's just good world building.
I mean, that makes the creature scarier, right? You're like, wow, he's just uncontrolled, fire-breathing.
It's like having the Hulk on your team.
Graves will reload with Nantuko, Husk, and Catacomb Sifter.
Not a bad collected company. Found his sacrifice outlet. Found his scry.
You know, this is a great, not a bad one. This is turning out to be a great collected company for Robert Graves.
Yeah, it's got that third copy of Rally hanging out.
Yeah. Tenjum's at 5. You know, this is not a game I expected Graves to be pulling out right now, but
so he still has.
He might get there.
He can rally for 2, get Cutthroat, Visionary, and so the Cyan trigger's on the stack right now. Looks like Tenjum's thinking about it.
So with the Catacomb Sifter trigger on the stack, a Fiery Impulse will go for Catacomb Sifter. Graves will sacrifice the Reflector Mage to scry. Put a card to the bottom. Now Fiery Impulse will hit Catacomb Sifter. Now Graves gets the Scion. And immediately he'll sack the Scion to rally the Ancestors for 3, and that's going to be it. Tenjum scoops it, and Robert Graves takes game 1 with 4-color rally.
Yeah, those rallies in hand really needed some help. That Sidicius Faithful looked bad, and when it was Jeskai Charmed, it looked worse, but that Polluted Delta allowed him to reshuffle, draw into a collected company, and hit some pretty dang good ones.
And there you have it. And with that, game 1 from Robert Graves goes to 4-color rally. We'll go ahead and look over at the sideboards quickly here. So we'll start with Andrew Tenjum. This is the Team Lotus Jeskai Black build. He has 3 copies of Disdainful Stroke, and this is a big one, 3 copies of Kozilek's Return, 2 Negate, 2 Roast, 3 Self-Inflicted Wound, and 3 Soulfire Grandmaster. I'm
actually not in love with Kozilek's Return. One thing that these rally decks have done is they've geared themselves towards having a lot of 3 toughness creatures. Tenjum's deck is clearly not piloting any 7-mana Eldrazi, so we will never see that one sweep for 5. The cards that I really like here are Disdainful Stroke, Negate, and I also like just bringing in Soulfire Grandmaster. So if you have one of those that you're able to leave up with 6 mana, you can just lock him off of spells for the rest of the game. Or if he's not casting them, just Fiery Impulse and buy that one back.
In a lot of ways, it seems like what we're wanting to do is take the Lotus build of Jeskai Black, and you're turning it into the classical build of Jeskai Black post-board.
In a matchup like Rally, you have to be really heavy on interaction. Jeskai Charm is not that. When it's actually interacting with your opponent, it's quite inefficient.
Yeah, I mean, you don't really like your ability to be able to burn out the rally deck?
No. It's just a tough game plan, especially against Robert, who has 3 copies of Eiley. The Zulaport Cutthroats don't help the matter either.
All right, we'll go over to Robert Graves' sideboard. 3 Arishan Clerics, 2 Anafenza, 2 Merciless Executioner, 3 Dispel, 2 Duress, and 3 Murderous Cut. Duress
and Dispel are always good against these blue decks. You get to know what's going on, take a card that matters. Dispel will fight you counter wars. Anafenza the Foremost has historically just been a strong card against Jeskai because it's kind of out of their reach in a lot of ways. So I wouldn't be super surprised to see that one come in. Arishan Cleric is medium. Tenjum is on a heavy burn plan, so maybe we should just bring that one in, but not a very high level of interaction. It doesn't help us kill them. We have to be mindful of what we're actually cutting.
So for you guys just joining us, we're well into way of Season 1 of our SCG Tour here in 2016. You see Andrew Tenjum, 7th place on the leaderboard. There's a lot of events, though, still to come. We talked earlier about the regional championships happening next week. You see right now we're in Columbus. But as we build up to the Columbus Invitational in April, we have many more events. We'd love to see you at them. We'll be going to Louisville, Philadelphia, Indianapolis, and Baltimore on our way back to Columbus. With tournaments in Standard, Modern, and Legacy, you can play the format of your choice at the Star City Games Open Series. Of course, we have every format every weekend with our Classics on Sunday as well.
Yep, there's some Classics going on right now. There's some over 200 players in the Modern Classic right now. Format's booming.
That's got to be exciting, especially with the Modern Pro Tour happening next week. I mean, personally, I'm very excited to see what kind of decks are going to come out of that event now with the banning of Splinter Twin.
Absolutely, and I've heard some doomsayers talking about Affinity and Infect taking over the format. I think there's actually a lot of room to explore.
Well, there are a lot of decks out there that you really couldn't play because Splinter Twin existed.
It was hard to cast anything that cost 3 mana at sorcery speed.
I'll say, the first one I jumped to was, I was always a huge Scapeshift fan back in the day. I never liked the twin matchup for Scapeshift. That one stunk.
Been a long time since I've seen a Geist of Saint draft.
Yeah, Geist of Saint. There'd be things like Jeskai Control. No one ever really played Jeskai Control, mainly because you just say, well, why don't you play Jeskai Twin? Or just Twin.
One of the weaknesses of Jeskai Control is you're trying to control the board with Lightning Bolts and Lightning Helixes, but those are also just how you win the game. Sometimes you run out because you have to point them at too many creatures. Double bolting a Deceiver Exarch didn't feel very good.
No, it was horrible. So that will be definitely interesting next week. We've seen the rise of these black Eldrazi decks. Not the Tron ones, just the Thought-Knot Seers.
Yeah, the deck occupies an interesting position in the metagame because unlike Tron, it's a little bit better against land destruction. You get options like Matter Reshaper and Wasteland Strangler you can just cast on turn 2. Thought-Knot Seer is also castable on turn 2.
That's the gross part of the deck.
Yeah. Sometimes you cast a Fulminator Mage and you're already just like a mile behind on board. Though, that said, the Eldrazi deck struggles immensely with Tron.
The more you go to Value Town, the more Tron doesn't care about you.
No, Tron's like, oh, you got a bunch of cards in your hand, you got a bunch of cards in play.
Karn them.
Karn your thing that matters, Ugin everything, Ugin your face.
Hey, Ugin can't exile things out of that Eldrazi deck. They're all devoid.
That's true, but Ulamog can.
Ulamog can.
The
That's because those are Ulamog's minions. Of course Ulamog can destroy his own minions.
The Eldrazi deck.
Have you not seen, bad horror movies? The Overlord, he's constantly killing his lieutenants.
As soon as you cast Ulamog, the Eldrazi actually just switch over to your board.
All right, we're underway for Game 2. Andrew Tenjum is down a game with his Jeskai Black build. Both these players on Team Lotus. These guys have been coming out playing the SCG Open as a team. It's really kind of our first, I guess outside of the Roanoke crew, it's really our first non-Virginia-based team to come to these events.
Yeah, it's excellent to see this kind of collaboration and really commitment to the tour. They had 7 members in attendance this weekend. 6 of them made day 2.
It's really impressive finish. And on top of that, we're seeing innovation out of them. This Jeskai Black build out of Keter, Tenjum, those players, that's a new deck that we're seeing here. And I like to see the teams come up with that sort of thing.
I also like that the team is not just committed to the team deck. Chris Anderson, he's on the team playing Red Black Dragons, Sure. They have these discussions, they have different opinions, and they're all testing them out. They're not just saying, okay, this is the team deck, I'm going to play it. They're doing some fact-finding for each other.
Soulfire Grandmaster was the turn 2 play for Tenjum. As you mentioned, that one right out of the sideboard for the matchup.
Yep, like that a lot. It does not match up well against 2/3s, so the body is a little lackluster, though Tenjum should be able to clear a path in most situations.
We go back over to Tenjum's turn. Robert Graves, 2 Evolving Wilds. The first one was for a Plains. This is putting a hamper on things for him. He has had a Duress in his opening hand, and it looks like maybe even a 2-drop, and just his mana not letting him do any of that.
The nice thing about Duress, though, is it doesn't especially matter until it's time to cast a Collected Company or a Rally the Ancestors. So he's not super unhappy to be sitting on that. It's not like Andrew Tenjum's playing a Hordling Outburst deck, so there's not proactive spells he's looking to discard, strictly reactive ones.
Well, something proactive that Andrew's doing is going to be Mantis Rider. That's going to join Soulfire Grandmaster into the red zone.
Yeah, at least we couldn't address that one. So
you don't feel bad about it.
It's just
nothing we can do.
It's a bad situation that we are forced to live in.
Graves draws land 3. Red land 4, rather. Now that he started the game on 2 basics, that Polluted Delta will fix up his colors very nicely. And once again, Reflector Mage just showing its strength here as it bounces that Mantis Rider.
Yep, that's going to save some life, force Tenjum to commit 3 more mana to it in another turn.
You watch a turn, that card's so gross. You watch a turn like that.
A turn where they have 3 lands and they cast a spell for 3 mana.
I mean, Andrew's start looked really good, and now it looks so unimpressive.
Missing the 4th land looks even less impressive. The Jace will help.
Jace will help, especially in this matchup. Robert does not have much removal, but what he is going to do is while Andrew's down with no blue mana, he's going to main phase a Collected Company.
Had to tap blue for Jace. Don't even need that Duress.
A lot of options here. Merciless Executioner ×2. That looks like what Robert could go with. He's going to go with Executioner plus Husk.
Okay, so we did bring in the Executioners. You know, Tenjum's creatures all do kind of matter. If there's a Mantis Rider that's just hitting you in the face, having an answer seems important.
Well, as these players are teammates, it's very possible that Robert has a much more knowledgeable sideboard plan on how to play against the Lotus build of Jeskai Black. The Lotus deck, I mean, is playing, for example, 16 creatures in the main deck. That's a lot more than we see out of the Roanoke build of this deck.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the Executioners would not be very good against Todd Anderson.
No, not at all. Husk gets to stay in play, though, as we go back to Andrew Tenjum. Now 3 cards in the yard. He missed a land drop last turn. Can he get one this one?
So, not activating Jace right away. There are 3 cards in the graveyard, perhaps considering. He has a Wooded Foothills in hand, considering whether or not he wants to flip the Jace this turn.
Yeah, does he want the 0/2 or the Planeswalker? It looks like he will crack the fetch land, so he does want a Planeswalker. We'll set him up with a 2nd red. Now has all colors of mana online.
Finding a basic mountain off of Foothills. I guess the Smoldering Marsh, probably only 1 copy in the deck.
Yeah, just 1 Smoldering Marsh. The other red sources, they have 4 copies of Wandering Fumarole in the deck.
Okay.
Good one, but not one you can Wooded Foothills for.
Right, and if you're burn heavy, Fumarole makes a lot of sense. That card actually packs quite the punch.
Yeah, the 4/1's great. A loot from Jace will discard Seeker of the Way. And maybe we're going to go back to Mantis Rider. That was reflected back on turn 3. And that'll be the play, and it'll swing Robert to 11. This is the exciting part for me. We touched on it in game 1, where the Lotus deck here can, you get to 11, you start counting burn. You start thinking, okay, Jeskai Charm, Dark Dwellers, just where are we here?
So if the Mantis Rider stays in play, borrowing another Reflector Mage from Robert, he's in 2 spell territory. The Duress will let him know exactly what's going on.
So a Duress sees Seeker of the Way, Dig Through Time, Negate, and then I think here's the big one, the card he wishes he could Duress, 2nd Mantis Rider.
Yeah, still can't hit that one. So the choice between Negate and Dig Through Time is a little tough. Notably, Tenjum only has 1 blue mana source. Makes the dig a little weak.
I think that's why you take the Negate, because you already figure that Andrew's going to go play the 2nd Mantis Rider next turn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like taking the Negate quite a bit. You're going to want your next Collected Company, or possibly even a Rally to resolve.
Now, with a white mana source, Andrew can play both Seeker of the Way and Mantis Rider next turn. We'll see what Graves does in the meantime. By taking Negate, Graves can set up for Rally the Ancestors more quickly.
Mm-hmm. Though he's going to have to do whatever he does quickly with that 2nd Mantis Rider hanging out.
Yeah, that's a 2-turn clock. He plays Zulaport Cutthroat. Now debating if he wants to swing Nantuko Husk.
Yeah, I believe that the Jace plussed on the Husk last turn.
Right, so the Husk is a 0/2. So if Mantis Rider blocks, Graves would have to sacrifice both creatures. Now, he might want to do that anyway. Creatures in the graveyard is hardly a penalty for 4-color Rally.
Right, and getting the Mantis Rider off the table, huge.
I guess one of the questions might be, does he want to swing Reflector Mage with the Husk?
If you're swinging the Husk, you're suggesting you want to sacrifice it anyway. He chooses to swing with neither.
So we'll pass back to Tenjum. So trying to think of the reasons he wouldn't want to swing right now. It's possible if he has a second Zulaport Cutthroat, that might be a reason he wouldn't want to swing yet.
Yeah, you don't want to sacrifice your creatures if you have the potential to drain 2 life with them at a time.
Because this is so scary. We see Tenjum play the second Mantis Rider, crash in for 6. It puts Graves down to 4. And Tenjum did hit the white mana, so there's Seeker of the Way.
Yeah, with Tenjum on 17, it's going to be really hard to assemble a lethal turn here, especially with that many blockers. The Husk is just not going to connect.
No, so we're looking at full combo kills then.
Yep. And I don't believe that Robert's Graveyard has enough going on it to make that a realistic outcome.
No, his hand would have to be full of Zulaport Cutthroats for this to work. And it looks like his hand has a Husk, a land. I don't think he has the Rally yet.
Second Husk is not what the doctor ordered.
So there's second Nantuko Husk. I think he just has lands.
Yeah, he's looking dead on board, and frankly, if I were Robert, I'd be picking him up right now. Just over 18 minutes left in the match. They have a 3rd game to finish.
Well, okay, Tenjum will tap the Flyers.
Tenjum figures out the line.
It's a tough one, but he got there.
All right, 4 versus 6. 6 is higher.
Well, Robert can sacrifice his whole team to go to 1. To go up to 7, and then I'll go down to 1.
Does force Tenjum to have some backup action to actually kill him.
All right, Graves up to 7. I mean, and this is a real Hail Mary. And Jeskai Charm will put an end to that. Won't even give him the chance to draw the Rally.
What he's playing to there is the Rally off the top. Unclear if that's even lethal.
I mean, it's certainly not lethal. I guess what we'd wonder is it enough
to gain enough life
to rally again, to
sure.
tap deck a second Rally?
There's some pretty complex math that goes into that. I'm going to say no in the dark until somebody proves me wrong.
Probably just correct. Then.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, we'll go back looking over at the sideboards. Soulfire Grandmaster has come in out of the board from Tenjum, also has a negate. You mentioned you didn't really like Kozilek's Return, and I don't think we've seen too much of that from Tenjum either.
No, I would be quite surprised to see him casting that spell in this matchup.
I was a little surprised to see both the Merciless Executioners in from Graves, but they played out very well that game.
Yeah, everything that Tenjum is casting matters. The Seeker of the Way makes the burn plan a lot better. 3 3s attack pretty profitably into 2 3s. Well, 1 2 3. 2 2 3s can brick wall it, but pressure on the board matters a lot, especially when you're on the play with Seeker of the Way. Graves just wants to keep the board clear, and realistically, killing Jace matters quite a lot. Something that we discussed earlier this week, something that Michael Majors talked about in his piece about Rally this week, is Jace advantage is very huge for this deck. So anytime that your opponent has Jace, maybe it's just too important to make sure that they don't have Jace and you do.
Players getting ready here for the deciding game. That's game 3 between Robert Graves and Andrew Tenjum. Both players at 8-2, looking for a top 8. We talked about the Season 1 schedule that we had just shown to you. Now, one thing also about Season 1 is that if you can get one of the player tokens when you show up for Season 1. So that goes back to Caleb Shear. He was our Season 4 Invitational last year. He took it down with Abzan Aggro in the finals, but that's not the deck people know him for. He is the Storm Master, and as such, you can get this Storm Counter token by coming to one of our SCG Open weekends. It is given to all Open participants. If you can only come for one day and show up on Sunday, all the Classic participants get them as well. And for those of you who aren't able to make it out to one of our weekends, you can get one of these in any order from StarCityGames.com of at least $5. And this is one token that I already have, and I'm pretty happy to have it.
Yeah, and even if you're not a Storm player, great way to know whether or not Surge is active. Stick
Yeah,
a
just whether or
stick a
not
1
he's-
on there, you can surge spells.
You could flip it over, right? If it's
Yeah,
up, then
face
you go
down.
Face down.
Face up, Caleb means that Reckless Bushwhacker kills you.
I'm casting Crush of Tentacles, not Reckless Bushwhacker.
Face up, Caleb means that you're gonna dirtle real hard.
That was it. Lightning Bolt Dragon. Is that guy? I don't know his name. There's a dragon that lightning bolts things if you surge him. I like that guy.
I believe you.
All right, both players start on Evolving Wilds. What's your favorite surge card?
I mean, it's hard to argue with the ones that are constructed playable for me.
Okay,
And
I
as
mean-
somebody who has cast a lot of Goblin Bushwhackers in my time, Reckless Bushwhacker does have a special place in my heart.
I mean, he's probably the best one.
Yeah, comparative analysis, though.
right,
I
all right.
do like to draw cards.
Your inspiration can get slightly better. It can be 3
Unclear.
instead. You can get divination at instant speed.
Unclear if I will ever cast that card in Constructed Magic.
All right, Graves starts out on Zulaport Cutthroat. For Tenjum, it will be Jace. We'll see whether or not Robert has the ability to remove that Jace from the board.
Yep, Executioner would be solid here. Poke you for 1, kill your Jace.
Maybe even for 2. You get to free roll the attack first.
You do. Little chump check.
I think he's blocking if he does it, though.
Yeah.
Oh, that's going to be the play, too. Let's see. Here's the chump check. It's an attack because why not? I think Andrew's kind of like, is there any way?
Might not want to block in case there's a Minister of Pain hanging out in Graves' hand.
We'll see. All right, so it was Merciless Executioner sacrificing the Cutthroat. We'll see whether or not it
Oh,
worked.
no.
Oh, no, and for Andrew Tenjum, he successfully blocked the 1/1, but he did not successfully draw a land, and this is huge.
Think about playing a deck with Jace. Any hand with the lands that can cast a Jace,
And
probably
Jace.
reasonable keep. You cast Jace, you can draw out of it. Problem with Jace, he's pretty prone to dying. He's quite fragile.
He's just a mind mage. He's not a fighter.
No, he's not a muscle mage. like Gideon.
Gideon's a muscle mage. I like that. So duress from Robert Graves was negated. Now, Andrew didn't draw the 3rd land, but he did draw a Seeker of the Way, so he tried for that, but it was reflected back into his hand. And there's a chance here for Andrew if he can get out of this land situation. He's going to be very low on life, but Robert's hand is very anemic.
Yep, just picked up another land for the turn.
Swing puts Tenjum down to 8. And here come the beats. It's Zulaport Cutthroat. The last cards in Robert's hand are both lands. He has no creature lands in play.
Yeah, so coming into play tap on the Fumarole here, not ideal, but that land gives him something to battle back with.
I mean, Tenjum just needs some blockers of some sort, maybe some fiery impulses, something.
Yep, we're back to being able to cast Seeker. At this point, we have access to Fiery Impulse mana.
That would be huge. If he can get a lifelink hit off the Seeker of the Way, Tenjum may be able to stabilize.
The threat of that might be enough to turn Robert off from attacking.
Well,
You attack with the Executioner.
You have the Executioner. Now, the danger is that if your hand is all lands, I almost feel like you have to attack here.
Yep, it's definitely a tough decision. You can just make him have it. And to be fair, if he has it, you're only killing him if you combo anyway, so.
Yeah, I mean, if he Fiery Impulses the Merciless Executioner and then blocks your Reflector Mage with a 3/3 lifelink, that's the game.
Yeah. Yeah, Robert, I think that what he wants to do is draw, well, Collected Company might not even be a great draw because Tenjum is not only representing Fiery Impulse, he's also representing Dispel.
So what he might want to do, then he could Collected Company post-combat. Not normally how you'd play it, but
No.
it might work here.
Or you can make the attack, see if he has the Impulse, if he casts the Impulse, just Company in response.
So if you had a Company here, there's also an argument to just not playing it into any open mana at any point. I mean, if Andrew's actually stuck on lands for this whole game, you feel like the chance that Andrew's going to have to tap out at some point is pretty high here, right?
Mm. So this is the attack that you make assuming that he has something and assuming that you can win the game somehow anyway.
Merciless Executioner by itself. And Andrew, if he has Dispel and Impulse, has to make a real choice here.
It's real hard not to block here one way or the other from 8 with a Cutthroat in play.
Here is Seeker of the Way. And is Andrew just going to let them trade? I can't imagine he will. It's Fiery Impulse for Zulaport Cutthroat. So
Okay, he'll take the trade. He goes up on life in it, and the Cutthroat is off the table.
and you know what? I think Graves is happy with the way that played out.
Yeah, I don't think that Tenjum played that poorly, but I do think that is a fine exchange for Graves, especially with the Jace follow-up.
Yeah, it's much better than if he'd swung Executioner and Reflector Mage, that would have been a disaster.
Yes.
The follow play for Graves was a Jace. We'll see if it gets to stick around. Answer is no, that's going to be reflected into Robert's hand. And despite being stuck on 2 lands, the land flood from Robert might catch up with him. And I say might because that's a good drop deck for him.
Yeah, Rally off the top is pretty solid here. Tenjum does still have access to that blue mana. Dispel is possible. Can't cast Jace on this turn, so we'll see if he casts the Rally instead. Chooses not to. Now Tenjum is back on negate mana.
We'll see how much Andrew continues to leave up mana. Here's a copy of Mantis Rider. It's going to swing in Robert down to 16.
Land at the top means that Mantis Rider enables him to leave up negate mana in addition to it. These last couple turns have been great for Tenjum.
Yeah, draw of Jace for Robert. Played one of his 2 copies now of Jace. Second Mantis Rider for Andrew. That's a swing for 6. Graves down to 10.
Apparently that card's still playable.
Yeah, Flyers has been one of the weaknesses of the Rally deck. Mantis Rider matches up very nicely here.
Absolutely.
The downside is that it can get reflected. And it's a good play when it happens. See Fiery Impulse also by Tenjum taking down that Jace, but at the same time, he's leaving up single blue.
Yeah, tapped out of negate, still have Dispel mana.
He's broadcasting Dispel pretty hard here, or at least that's the read I would take on this.
He's had access to it pretty much the entire game. You have to be respecting that, but at some point, you're just dead to Mantis Rider.
Yeah, you have to call him. I mean, next turn, there's the risk of Mantis Riders and Jeskai Charm just killing you.
Yeah, I mean, you're dead on board if he has Jeskai Charm. You got to do something.
Andrew Tenjum stuck on 2 lands may have turned the corner here. A Dispel will almost certainly win it for him. Now, if you're Robert, you'd like to try to play around it, but I'm not sure he's able to. You just have to crash into the Dispel.
Does have his own copies of Dispel in his sideboard, but did not manage to pick one up.
Yeah, I mean, he was waiting until he drew a second Rally or his own Dispel. That's why we haven't been seeing him play them. He knows how important this card is.
I think that Robert knows what he has to do, but is very unhappy with the fact that it is that way.
Can try for Jace again. Now, if Jace is in play here, what he can do is he can play Rally on Andrew's turn. If Rally just gets countered, there's the potential for Jace to flip and flashback Rally.
True.
Now, a lot of things could go wrong here. I mean, we already talked about how Mantis Riders plus Jeskai Charm is actually just lethal.
Also, Tenjum's a sharp player. Just because he's been representing Dispel does not mean he has it. And he could be taking advantage of the fact that he has been representing Dispel, and he expects Robert to pick up on that. Maybe his hand is negate.
If Andrew did not have Dispel this game, then he's been playing this masterfully. And here's the Rally. And it's just going to resolve. All right. Well played, Andrew. He got away with so much.
Yeah.
That was... Wow. All right. So, creatures rally back are Zulaport Cutthroat, times 2, Merciless Executioner, and a Jace. That one's going to get Legend ruled immediately, but it will still trigger both the Cutthroats.
This is a big swing for Robert, but he's not out of the woods yet. There is no sacrifice outlet.
Yeah, he had an Antuco Husk in hand, but just wasn't able to do anything with it. Executioner will sacrifice one of Robert's Cutthroats. That's another drain of 2. Reflector Mage is going to attack. It's going to be 2 damage whether Tenjum blocks it or not.
Yep. No, that's a great attack.
But you expect all of these to be exiled next upkeep then.
Interestingly, on the upkeep, in response to the rally trigger, what Robert can do, activate Jace, try to draw a copy of Collected Company, try to get a sacrifice outlet in play that way.
All right.
Though with the Cutthroat down, with only one copy in play now, that's looks like it's going to be a little short even if he finds that. If he finds Husk second Cutthroat.
And I think because there was only one Cutthroat in play, Tenjum actually took the block on Reflector Mage.
Yeah, save a life that way.
Well, it's interesting because Reflector Mage was not actually one of the ancestors for that turn. It had already been there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we see the activation of Jace on upkeep. Looks like he found a Murderous Cut, which kills a Mantis Rider.
Kills a Mantis Rider.
Jace enables you to flash it back and kill the other.
Cutthroat and Executioner are exiled. And here's a draw. It's a Forest. So he may be able to kill both Mantis Riders.
Plenty of fetch lands hanging out in the graveyard.
Absolutely. He's going to exile 4 of them. Murderously cut one of the Mantis Riders. Now, there is still that Wandering Fumarole in play for Andrew. We haven't seen that land be relevant, but even if these Mantis Riders die, something like an end-step Jeskai Charm and then a Fumarole would be lethal.
Mm-hmm. And Jace cannot target the land. Not that he's going to have access to Jace for anything other than Murderous Cut, but the 2 cracks from the Fumarole are lethal is what I'm getting at.
Murderous Cut takes care of 1 Mantis Rider. And Jace will give a spell flashback. It's still Murderous Cut again.
Surprise. Thinking about delving just to represent a spell that he does not have.
The only creature he had to delve away to do that was his copy of Jace. And I think it looks like he's representing Collected Company.
Mm-hmm. Forest is pretty close. They're both, well, they're not green by color identity, but
And Tenjum was okay letting Graves kill the first Mantis Rider, but the second one is a no-go. Disdainful Stroke will hit the Murderous Cut. And now this is scary. End step, here's Jeskai Charm. It's not going at Jace. That's going upstairs. Robert's down to 4. Here's Chandra Flamecaller. That's going to be better than the Forest in Robert's hand. It's not a Collected Company.
That's a strong analysis.
And a swing in there will do it for Andrew Tenjum. So 2-1. Andrew Tenjum is victorious over Robert Graves. And, the weekend's 4-color rally curse continues.
Yeah, and interesting, the thing about that Disdainful Stroke on the Murderous Cut is Tenjum is just saying, I know you don't have Collected Company. You can't fool me.
Because he actually has him dead on the board without the Mantis Rider.